The 34th annual summit of the Arab League concludes with the approval of a monetary fund for the restoration of the Gaza Strip. The United Nations Children's Fund denounced the killing of at least 45 children in the Gaza Strip in the last 2 days. And in Colombia, social, popular, and political organizations held open meetings in defense of the reforms promoted by President Gustavo Petro. Hello, welcome From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. In Iraq, the 34th annual summit of the Arab League concluded with the approval of a monetary fund for the restoration of the Gaza Strip. The meeting was attended by heads of states, presidents, and foreign ministers of Arab countries in the midst of a context marked by multiple crises and regional transformations. The Arab leaders called for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, establishment of an independent Palestinian state, and a unified approach to the challenges in the Middle East. In this regard, Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani announced the launching of the Arab Fund for the reconstruction of Gaza and Lebanon under the supervision of the Arab bloc.
We are announcing 18 ambitious initiatives to promote joint Arab action, the most important of which is the initiative to establish an Arab fund to support post-crisis, post-conflict, and post-war recovery and reconstruction efforts. We confirm here Iraq's contribution of $20 million for the reconstruction of Gaza and another $20 million for the reconstruction of brotherly Lebanon.
Meanwhile, Iraqi Foreign Minister Fuad Hussein met with the Prime Minister of Lebanon, Nawaf Salam, as part of the 34th Summit of the Arab League. Diplomat Hussein stressed the importance of Prime Minister Salam's visit as a key step towards strengthening relations between Baghdad and Beirut. He also stressed the need to unite efforts to reach an agreement on security, stability, and sustainable development in the region. For his part, Salam praised Baghdad's historic role in Arab unity with its ability to build bridges of cooperation between member nations in the face of the current challenges shared by the bloc. And in this context, the president of Egypt, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, denounced the intensification of the Israeli genocide against the Gaza Strip before the member countries of the Arab League. During his speech, the Egyptian leader pointed out that the Palestinian cause is going through one of the most dangerous phases as its people are subjected to systematic and brutal crimes with the aim of putting an end to their presence in Gaza. Al-Sisi also emphasized that the Israeli machine does not show any consideration for children and the elderly. On the contrary, it implements policies of destruction. The Egyptian president acknowledged the steadfastness of the Palestinian people in defending their legitimate right to their land and homeland. And Iran says it is ready for dialogue with the United States, but warns that it will not be intimidated by threats. During a meeting with senior Iranian army commanders and members of the Iranian army, President Masoud Pezeshkian said that his government does not seek war and is willing to negotiate over its nuclear program, but that it will never renounce to its legitimate rights. The statement came after his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump escalated his hostile rhetoric against Iran on Friday, warning of unspecified consequences if Tehran does not act swiftly on what he called a U.S. proposal.
We are negotiating and will continue to do so. We don't seek war, but we don't fear any threats. It's not like we will back down from our inalienable rights as human beings if they threaten us. We won't back down.
And Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urged the United States to leave the region while talks over its nuclear program are ongoing. The statements follow Donald Trump's visit to Arab countries. The Supreme Leader insisted that Iran must continue and advance in the development of nuclear energy. Khamenei detailed that Tehran is not actively seeking the creation of a nuclear bomb in spite of Washington's statements.
Trump said that without the United States, these nations couldn't last 10 days, that it's the United States that keeps them afloat. Now, through its dealings, behavior, and proposals, the United States is once again promoting and imposing this same model, presenting it in a way that suggests these countries can't survive without the United States. This model has undoubtedly failed. Thanks to the determination of regional nations, the United States must and will leave this region.
The United Nations Children's Fund denounced the killing of at least 45 children in the Gaza Strip in the last 2 days. The multilateral body affirms that children are the ones who suffer the most from the genocide taking place in the coastal enclave, where dozens of children spend days without food and are also victims of indiscriminate attacks. The UN warns about the deterioration of the situation for the last 2 months due to the blockades imposed by the Israeli forces against humanitarian aid. It also reiterated that the rights of children are seriously violated every day. In this sense, it called for urgent action to protect them. Also in the Gaza Strip, over the last 24 hours, Israeli forces have killed 153 Palestinians and wounded 459 others. Health authorities say the number of fatalities has increased to 53,272, the number of wounded to 120,673 since the genocide started. They also warned that emergency services are still unable to reach the victims or recover bodies trapped under the rubble due to the Israeli blockade on roads. Authorities denounced that Israeli troops continue with the offensive despite calls made by the United Nations Security Council for an immediate ceasefire. And on Saturday, people in the UK marched in commemoration of the 77th anniversary of the Nakba and in support of Palestine. Hundreds of people gathered in Westminster Bridge in London waving Palestinian flags. During the demonstration, participants recalled the expulsion of at least 700,000 Palestinians who were forced to leave their homes because of the Arab-Israeli war. Demonstrators also condemned Israel's 19-month onslaught aimed at seizing Palestinian territory and wiping out its inhabitants. In other topics, in Libya, thousands of people took to the streets to demand the resignation of Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Dbeibeh. Following the growing tensions raised by bombing carried out by forces loyal to the National Unity Government against demonstrators, the High Council of State issued a communique urging the so-called National Unity Government to resign within 48 hours. The attack left at least one person dead and several injured amid discontent over the political situation. Meanwhile, 7 ministers and 4 deputy ministers of Dbeibeh's cabinet resigned amid protests, and they urged their colleagues to resign as well to avoid confrontation between Libyans. We now have our first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Romania, the nationalist candidate for the presidency, George Simeon, accused French President Emmanuel Macron of meddling in the second round of the presidential elections to be held this Sunday, May 18th. Simeon claims that French Ambassador Nicolas Warnery went to the Constitutional Court to denounce an alleged manipulation of the elections by Russia, which led to the annulment of the results of the first round. While he toured all regions of the country during the campaign to convince businessmen to support the pro-European Union and Mayor of Bucharest, Nicu Sordan. Likewise, George Simeon emphasized that it was not up to them to interfere in the sovereign will of the Romanian people, together with French far-right European Parliament member Marion Maréchal. And U.S. President Donald Trump closed his 4-day Middle East tour by saying good things will happen in Gaza, but without mentioning Israel's bombing in recent days, which left more than 50 people dead on Friday alone. President Trump simply said that a lot of good things were going to happen over the next month, and we are going to have to help the Palestinians as well. During his visit, the U.S. head of state tiptoed around difficult geopolitical issues related to the region to focus on the $3 or $4 trillion in trade deals between U.S. companies and Gulf investors. Meanwhile, for the third day in a row, Israel continued its attacks on the Gaza Strip on Friday, leaving 50 dead, according to a spokesman for the civil protection of the Palestinian enclave. And the U.S. Supreme Court on Friday stood in the way of President Donald Trump's plans, refusing to move forward with the deportations of a group of migrants under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. The decision, which upheld some 200 Venezuelan migrants held in a Texas detention center, were on the verge of deportation if the broad powers of that archaic wartime legislation were invoked. Justices remanded the case to an appeals court to decide the underlying questions, including whether the president's actions is legal and how far in advance the migrants who would be affected by the measure should be informed. The decision has been rated by some media as a break for Trump. And the Venezuelan government welcomed 195 nationals from Honduras repatriated through the Back to the Homeland plan. Authorities detailed that 27 women and 168 men arrived on board the flight as a result of the government's efforts to reunite more than 200 families. These citizens are among the victims of the anti-migrant policies implemented by the U.S. government since the arrival of President Donald Trump. And also in Venezuela, the candidates of the Great Patriotic Poll continued the electoral campaign for the regional and local elections on May 25th. During the campaign mobilization, several candidates of the Chavista forces urged the population to exercise their right to vote, besides reaffirming their commitment with the protection of the people. In the rally held in the Andean region, the Secretary General of the party, Diosdado Cabello, warned about possible actions of the far right after the results of the elections of May 25th. The leaders assured that the mobilizations in support of the candidates of the Great Patriotic Poll are the prelude to a great victory and must guarantee national peace and stability. Like this, we have a short break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final break, we'll be right back. Welcome back. In Colombia, various social, popular and political organizations hold open meetings throughout the country in defense of the reforms promoted by President Gustavo Petro. The town meetings called by President Petro seek not only to reject the refusal of the right-wing parliamentarians to the social reforms, but also to create ways that lead to the development and implementation of these projects for the benefit of the Colombian people. After the veto of the popular consultation by the Senate, the national government promotes the open meetings as a constitutional mechanism for citizen participation. And with 6 months to go until COP30, the 19th International Conference on Community-Based Adaptation to Climate Change took place this week in Recife, Brazil. Our correspondent Brian Muir with the details.
According to the national census, 1.3 million Brazilians live in rural communities called quilombolas, which were founded by people who escaped slavery and have similar land rights as indigenous reserves. During the 19th International Conference on Community-Based Adaptation to Climate Change in Recife, Activists highlighted the important role that these communities have stewarding the environment.
We understand that Mother Nature and all animals exist so that we can share our existence and live together. We do not believe that we should exploit our natural patrimony in any way because we know that it's because of nature that we can guarantee the presence of our species and the life of the planet.
In Pernambuco's southern forest zone, Engenho Siqueira Quilombola sits on the edge of a huge mangrove forest. Residents there have been farming, fishing, and gathering shellfish since the community was first founded by people who escaped slavery in the 1600s.
Quilombola residents have way of life which we can call sustainable, in collaboration with nature. They consider themselves as part of nature and conserve their biome, all of its vegetation and all of the biodiversity. Their way of life is based on cooperation with nature.
Like people from other quilombolas and indigenous reserves across Brazil, the residents of Engenho Siqueira are on the front lines of the fight for climate change mitigation, often seeing changes in the environment years before the rest of society discovers what's happening.
The water is becoming too salty, and this is preventing some species from inhabiting our mangrove forest, such as the aratu and blue crabs. We also see that climate change is affecting our ecosystem because the people who regularly go fishing are saying that there is a shortage of fish in our community.
With support from the MST and local environmentalist networks like Sabiá, residents of Engenho Siqueira are fighting to transform the mangrove forest in Rio Formosa into a national park. Brian Mir, teleSUR, Pernambuco.
In the United States, authorities registered the death of at least 2 people amidst flooding caused by heavy rains in several regions. Both deaths were caused by the collapse of trees in Fairfax County and Fort Hunt in the state of Virginia. Authorities also report that at least 90,000 people are without power due to thunderstorms in Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. Heavy rainfalls are expected to continue over the weekend. In Argentina, the Buenos Aires metropolitan area is affected by a fierce storm that caused flooding in several municipalities. At the same time, the National Meteorological Service issued alerts of various colors in different zones to warn the population about the dangers of the storms. According to the municipal chief, the situation is very complicated as more than 150 millimeters of water fell, half of that in Bahia Blanca. In addition, the crisis committee was activated to attend to the emergencies, such as the cut of electric supply due to the fall of branches on cables. There were also reports of creek overflows that caused significant traffic delays. And Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel leads the closing of the 13th Congress of the National Association of Small Farmers with the objective of adopting strategies to consolidate food sovereignty. During the meeting, participants addressed topics such as the use of bioproducts, better use of the soil, and the commitment of Cuban farmers to food production. The forum was a space to listen to the experiences of more than 80,000 Cuban women. The Cuban head of state also emphasized that this Congress will only be remembered as historic if it translates into a concrete increase in food production in the face of the blockade imposed by the United States more than 6 decades ago. And the first law promulgated by the Cuban Revolution on May 17, 1959 was the Agrarian Reform signed by Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro Ruz. The date was then instituted as the Day of the Farmer, and 2 years later, on May 17, 1961, the National Association of Small Farmers was created. This law was transcendental in the first stage of the revolution since it benefited more than 100,000 rural families and liquidated latifundism and imperialist domination over the lands. It also annulled the right of foreign companies and individuals to own land in Cuba. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. With TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.